certification to teach. Turned out to be not so bad.
Oh, nice.
I hope. We'll see.
That's funny. I remember there was an architectural exam once, and there was supposed to be like a pre-exam or something. And I did it, and but I kept going, didn't realize what I'd done. And the teacher looked at it. She goes, "All right, that'll be enough. You can go." And I went, "Well, where's the test?" You just finished it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, the time did go by fast, I'll tell you that.
nice.
Uh, Now, why is this not showing? Oh, there we are. Okay, there we are. Now I'm having to decide. Debbie got her teeth straightened with Invisalign, and I'm having to decide at age 77 whether I should do that. Because I've always had these fangs, right?
Yeah, it's funny. My bottom one's straightened up in the last 3 months,
Uh-huh.
and it's all the carnivore diet that I went on.
Oh.
And I realized, refined sugars, refined carbs, pretty much malnutrition, processed
Hmm.
food. And I'm like, oh, my gums are stronger, my teeth are starting. And I started worrying. I'm like, I had like, braces for over 4 years in
Oh,
high
you did
school.
have. Okay.
I had canines that you could actually cut your finger on. They were fully in front of the other teeth. So
Yeah.
they always called me Drac in eighth grade because,
Well, I was not, my family could not afford braces, and we never thought much about it, to be honest. We
Mhm.
never discussed it at home. And so anyway, here we are.
So you're
And
going to do it?
yeah,
You think?
I'm thinking about it. Depends on if I have to have back surgery or not. I'm gonna have a physical here at the end of the month and probably get them to do some work on looking at my back, my lower back, because
Mm,
if I have what is it called, stenosis of the lumbar spine, uh,
stenosis. Yeah.
uh,
Is it
where
stenosis?
I think it's called stenosis of the lumbar spine, and I think what it means basically is that your back is crumbling,
Hmm.
um, and um, and so it's not real bad right now. It's livable. But because I'm doing so much walking and stuff at school, I am thinking that maybe I better think about doing that first before I do my teeth. And the good thing is I have 14 weeks in the summer to recover if I have some surgery. So looking into it. Okay. Good
It's a
morning,
lot.
everyone. Pardon?
That's a lot.
Yeah,
I said, that's a lot.
yeah, that it is. Okay, so good morning, everyone. We are in the seven sermons of the dead. We've read 1 through 3, and what I need to do is see if I can get onto my screen the the red book so that everybody can follow along. Um, and we'll do that post haste here. Did you figure out where it is? It's like at 440 or something like that on the.
Yeah, I'm on page 339 of the PDF, which starts scrutiny's number 4,
Okay.
several weeks later, after Philemon has risen to heaven. Actually, Philemon has risen to heaven and taken the language with him. It's like
Oh, yes. Okay. Well,
that
that's
was in 3.
okay. So we are at footnote 103. Wow, I
Oh,
worked out pretty well. Uh, I got to.
Maybe I'm not in the right place. Here we go.
Okay.
Footnote 104.
Yep, I've got it. So it's number 9. Okay, so folks, I'm going to give you the text. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. We are going to be reading the 4th Sermon to the Dead. And this is on page 523 if you're reading the reader's edition, if you have the reader's edition of the book. And otherwise, I'm going to show you the electronic version. And you should be able to follow along. So let me share my screen. Okay, so here we are on subparagraph 9 of this scrutinies, and this is the 4th sermon to the dead. The following night, the dead came running sooner, filling the place with their mutterings, and said, "Speak to us about God and gods and devils, accursed one." And Philemon appeared and began to speak, and this is the 4th sermon to the dead. The sun god is the highest good, the devil the opposite. Thus you have 2 gods, but there are many high and good things and many great evils. Among these are 2 devil gods. One is the burning one, the other the growing one. The burning one is Eros, in the form of a flame. It shines by consuming. The growing one is the tree of life. It greens by heaping up growing living matter. Eros flames up and dies, but the tree of life grows with slow and constant increase through measureless periods of time. Good and evil unite in the flame. Good and evil unite in the growth of the tree. In their divinity, life and love stand opposed. The number of gods and devils is as innumerable as the host of stars. Each star is a god, and each space that a star fills is a devil. But the empty fullness of the whole is the pleroma. Abraxas is the effect of the whole, and only the ineffective opposes him. 4 is the number of the principal gods, as 4 is the number of the world's measurements. 1 is the beginning, the sun god. 2 is Eros, for he binds together and spreads himself out in brightness. 3 is the tree of life, for it fills space with bodies. 4 is the devil, for he opens all that is closed. He dissolves everything formed and physical. He is the destroyer in whom everything becomes nothing. Happy am I who can recognize the multiplicity and diversity of the gods, but woe unto you who replace this incomparable multiplicity with a single God. In so doing, you produce the torment of incomprehension and mutilate the creation whose nature and aim is differentiation. How can you be true to your own nature when you try to turn the many into one? What you do unto the gods is done likewise unto you. You all become equal, and thus your nature is maimed. Equality prevails not for the sake of God, but only for the sake of man. For the gods are many, while men are few. The gods are mighty and endure their manifoldness. Like the stars, they abide in solitude, separated by vast distances. Therefore, they dwell together and need communion so that they may bear their separateness. For redemption's sake, I teach you the reprehensible, for whose sake I was rejected. The multiplicity of the gods corresponds to the multiplicity of men. Numberless gods await the human state. Numberless gods have been men. Man shares in the nature of the gods. He comes from the gods and goes unto the God. Thus, just as it is no use to reflect upon the pleroma, it is not worthwhile to worship the multiplicity of the gods. Least of all does it serve to worship the first God, the effective fullness, and the summum bonum. By our prayer, we can add nothing to it and take nothing from it, because effective emptiness gulps down everything. The bright gods from the heavenly world, the bright gods form the heavenly world. It is manifold and extends and increases infinitely. The sun god is the extreme lord of the world. The dark gods form the earthly world. It is simple and diminishes and declines infinitely. The devil is its nethermost lord, the moon spirit, satellite of earth, smaller, colder, and more dead than the earth. There is no difference between the might of the heavenly and earthly gods. The heavenly gods magnify, the earthly gods diminish. Both directions are immeasurable. Shall I stop there for a minute?
Sure. It's interesting that there's no difference between the might of the heavenly and earthly gods. The heavenly gods magnify, the earthly gods magnify, the earthly gods diminish. Both directions are immeasurable. So I think there's a metaphor or an allusion to the infinity of the psyche inside.
Yes.
But what's interesting is where we started back on, one is the beginning, the sun god. If I leave Arabic numerals and go to the Mayan glyphs, Coptic, Egypt, and Egyptian numerology, one is actually represented by the value of 3. So there's never a one or a unity unless there's a trinity within it. 2 is then the connection of 2 trinities. That equals 3, and 3 is 6, which is the number of exchange, or the epic spiral of giving and receiving, equanimity, balance, reciprocality. Then 3, a trinity, is actually a trinity of trinities. So you get that dynamic 9. But what's interesting, 4 then places things. 3 comes to life, like Venus, triangle, first geometry. 4 then gives that place, that geometry, a place to live. So 4 is kind of a little empire or emperor. But funny thing is, then 4 times 3 is 12, which is 1 plus 2 back to 3, back to 1. So back to your alchemical, was it 4th century female alchemist?
The theorem of Maria.
Yeah, theorem of Maria.
Prophetess of Maria.
Yeah, Prophetessa Maria.
Or Maria Prophetessa. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Maria Prophetessa. The 1, 2, 3, 4, you can play an alignment game with her thinking, but open it up a little more with 1 being a symbol rather than the Arabic number 1. And in ancient Egypt, the symbol of 1 inherently has a trinity within it. So there's every time 2 people interact, there's 6 people, the 3 and the 3.
Yeah.
So it, not only that, to me, 1 as a symbol, 2 as a symbol, that then comes into play with Maria Prophetessa, and also modern psychology of, me, my sacred generative side, my sacred formative side, AKA Jung saying feminine and masculine. I'm trying to get away from the early 20th century sexism and just say generative and formative, because we all each have both.
Right.
But so I think that coming back, there's a difference between the might of the heavenly and the earthly gods. I think that earthly god would be the number 1 numeral one with a little serif at the top and the bottom, and there's a, oh look, it's one, it equals one. But then the heavenly one is a symbol, which is a trinity.
Mhm.
So I think we can play a double game at the same time, because like both directions are immeasurable, and heavenly gods magnify the one as symbol to three, earthly gods diminish, one precipitates just to be the value uno, one.
Right.
So it's
And
a fun.
and the essence of it is even this is intended to bring these ideas down to the conceptual level where human beings can understand it. But
Yes,
one thing that we can't understand is the singularity before the Big Bang. Okay, that there still is a mystery there, and it's beyond comprehension, beyond reason, beyond cognition. It
it
simply
is.
is.
I think that's a great point too. And if I play that, which is our Western thinking, and again to ancient Mayan and ancient Egyptian thinking, magic then was a technology. It wasn't something that was nebulous. It was
Mhm.
practiced.
Right, right,
So,
right,
the Romans came in and the people were kind of hard to rule. So they removed all the papyri from the temples,
right.
and that solved that. But the problem is that lost a lot of things to history. That there was a kind of a glorious largeness to how they lived that wasn't just Greek reason and logic. If I take the Stoics, we get all their wonderful, inspirational, confidence building quotes, but they were a crazy, nonsensical group in context, and so these gems get spit out that we see all over the internet now. But the reality is, they would be speaking to you from multiple perspectives at the same time. So they might have in person been pretty hard to understand.
Yeah, and absolutely true. And as Jung liked to say, um, the ancients lived their images. Okay, they lived their symbols. And so it's exactly what you were saying, that
Yeah.
they were living their symbols. And so anyway, let us go on.
Well, that I think that alludes to your doodles. You're living your symbols. You're living them into being.
Right,
The reasons don't need to be reasonable. They don't even need to be unreasonable. They just are.
right, right. Okay, so um, yeah, let's. I don't know if my big doodle came across here this morning. It might have. Um, yes, there it is. So I'm gonna, because you mentioned it, I'm going to stop here on the share and
Mm-hmm.
share the doodle for a moment. So this is, I'm now about 2 months into this. Hold on a second, I don't have it on the screen. Um, what's going on? Um, or, yeah, I'm at least 2 months into this at this point. And so uh, it's kind of, it's certainly interesting from my point of view to see what I'm living into existence, as you rightly say. Okay, so this is a very large piece of watercolor paper. It is 40 inches wide and 25 and a half inches tall. And as you see, I'm starting to show the different quadrants here. So the upper left there is the dream and vision quadrant. I haven't shown much of that yet, but it's very dark. Everything on the left side of the image is the past, and everything on the right is the future. And so uh, what the lower left is the creative wellspring. And so you can see I use warmer colors, hotter colors to express the creative wellspring. And in the upper right is the mission and the future, hope for the future. And that's represented by yellow. Yellow represents hope. And the lower right are the tools that one has to determine the future, to achieve the mission. And so they are basically wisdom, which is represented normally by purple. And so you see that starting to emerge here. Um, and takes a long time. I worked on this for an hour and a half this morning and only managed to get the yellow and the green lines surrounding the yellows. And those are actually Winsor blue lines, but as soon as when the yellow is still wet, the Winsor blue turns instantly to green as you put it onto the page. So you think you're painting green, but it in fact is Winsor blue mixed with the yellow in the wetness. And I have to get myself a little water spray bottle today because I need to start wetting my work a little bit more. And there's one other thing to see, which is this piece. This is my latest study, let's say. And actually, this is only the center of it. I don't have the whole thing here, but I highlighted the center of it because I think it's interesting. I always put an orangeman in the center. That orangeman represents me, myself, and so here the orange man got put down, and then I wanted to put Forrest behind his head, but look what turned up as I was doing it. First of all, I have the Grinch, the evil, the shadow is here, right? This whole green thing is like a shadow complement to the orange. And within that, there's this little monkey sitting here working the controls. And then there's unbirthed creatures here. I don't know how many of them because you can actually pick out several if you look. And those are in the center. And all this came out spontaneously. And finally, then you see a new face with the blue here, the green nose, and so on. So I don't know where we're going. And so like this purple is actually the inside of the mouth of this huge green creature, which kind of represents the dark side in there. And maybe this part above or in front of the eyes of the orange man, that's sort of a vision of the dark side, I suppose. But then it fills out and becomes a whole head all the way around here. So
it reminds me of a road trip where, hey, dude, that tree's cool, turn left. That's about all you need for reasons, and
right.
As you kind of road trip your way through how the colors populate and habit the paper, the piece, then these things literally live themselves into being, and you associate and you make relationships to
Yeah.
the community within that's now being put down on the paper.
Yeah. So I was actually, I'll show you a larger picture of that so that you see how it's fitting into the entire square. Now these pieces are 18 by 24, and it's the size that Colleen Kibert recommends for Rockies in her new book, Art and Spirit. And so I decided to get myself a tablet of 20 Arches watercolor paper. It's hot press paper, so it's not very rough, as many watercolor papers are cold pressed, and therefore they're very granular, but I don't prefer that kind. So if you want a smooth paper, you have to get a hot pressed. And
You use a
uh,
90 pound or 140 pound?
this is 140 pound, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like the light board, right?
Right. And so there's actually 20 sheets here on this tablet, because when you buy it from Arches, it is like a tablet, but on all four sides. And then after you're done, you cut it apart. And what that does is it keeps it straight
And flat. Yeah.
and flat while you're painting it. And so that's working pretty well. If you see on my big piece, well, you can't really see it, but I have to weight down the corners because it's starting to curl up on me. I mean, that's a $16 piece of paper, single piece of paper that costs $16. I think it may be Arches also, but it's not on a tablet. And the one that I just showed, the tablet, I think that cost me $115 for this.
Bet they've gone up.
Pardon?
They've just really gone up.
Well, this is a very big piece too. You can get I used to buy 7 by 12 or something like that, which are very long pieces because I was doing landscapes. And those are only about $20. But this is 18 by 24, so it's pretty big pieces of paper here.
I just remember my 20 packs of 140 pound Montval watercolor board or watercolor paper cold press was like 56, $65. But so
Right.
I mean, but I guess I could probably carbon date them. That's far back enough.
Right. So Richard says here, where did he say it? Richard says, I see minds within minds here. Absolutely. And I'm expecting the big piece to have, by the time I'm finished with it, it'll probably have 200 to 300 beings in it of various kinds. I mean, as you look at this one, this could easily be a monkey or something that's hanging there on the back of the head doing, he's doing something in there, God knows what. And all this was done spontaneously. In other words, I just wanted to put green down behind the orange, and I was not thinking of doing anything but putting a forest behind the orange. And when I put the forest down, I had already seen the monkey. I'd noticed that appear, but the green, I just wanted to put down this green color, this forest green color. And all of a sudden I look at it and I said, oh my God, there's the Grinch. I said, oh my God. So anyway, that's how it works when you do this, and it's very interesting what it does. And I'm not suggesting that I'm any great artist or anything. I think if anybody does this, if anybody does a doodle, their own doodle, not my doodle, but their own doodle, and then colors it and then does a Rocky treatment on the coloration, um, you're going to get the same thing. You're going to get lots of faces and so on. And indeed, that's exactly what Colleen says in Art and Spirit, is that.
Well,
Okay,
I think
now,
what's interesting, that always says to me, um, I always see art in nature, and what's cool about this is then you see nature in art. And I always knew that if I had a piece and I didn't see lots of things that I didn't intend, I didn't like it. It was like, oh,
uh-huh,
that is just a graphic, and but if I let go and there was that flow state at some point, um, later people will go, oh, I see this and I see this, and I'll go, oh, I didn't see that, and
yeah,
so there's an aliveness, I think, to what I consider the difference between art and graphic. And it doesn't have to be shapes like organic shapes. I mean, even Piet Mondrian, some cubist pieces, I still get a feeling from, and
yeah,
that's because of the aliveness of proportion. So
mhm,
yeah, so
yeah. So it's all, so it is alive. That's
mhm.
what I
Yeah,
find is that this is alive. And once I complete these pieces, I, I don't see it the same way twice. Let me
right.
see if I have the other piece that I put out for framing here. Ah, yes, here it is. Okay, this piece I did for my daughter for her birthday, and I've now completed it, and it's in for framing. And you can see if you pay attention to it, you will see probably 100 faces in there at least, and it's very alive. You can't look at it the same way twice. It just draws your eyes hither and yon, and I shouldn't say what I see in it, but it's very appropriate for my daughter's birthday. Uh, so she's getting it.
Right.
and and the and I'm kind of excited about what is happening here. The other piece, the one with the Grinch, I when I realized that the dark side was there, that the shadow was there, I said, "Oh my God, I can't give this to my number three daughter, whose birthday is next in
Mm-hmm.
May, and I wanted to do one for her, and and then this Grinch appeared, and I go, "Oh my God, I can't give this to her," uh,
Uh, she might
because,
not see that,
well, no, but she probably will, because I'll probably mention it, and then you can't unsee it,
and
right?
then she's like, "You got to wrap it up and give it to me for Christmas." It's funny though, you bring up the Grinch, and I heard someone last week, just overheard someone walking by, and it was, again, I think it's so funny. Every week I hear some joke when I'm at my table, and then you always bring something up, and I always have some fresh thing just because someone walked by. But it's one of the funnier things I think I've heard. They said maybe the Grinch wouldn't be such an ass and mean if the narrator wasn't always barking bulls at him. Like, you're a mean one. He's like, the narrator's bullying him. You're a mean one, Mr.
Uh,
Grinch. What if he sang nice songs to the Grinch? It's like maybe he's just getting irritated that he's getting picked on by the narrator.
well, doesn't he end up with a heart of gold later
Yeah,
on?
he does.
Yeah.
So
And so anyway, I've gone hot and cold on it because I started it this particular daughter, my third daughter, was always Miss Sunshine. She was very happy and
mm,
all the time, and has been since birth. Basically, she's been the happiest child. Um, and she's always just happy and gay and full of sunshine. She's got 3 children now, a pair of twins and another daughter. And she just loves life. And so I was trying to do something light by using light colors and so on
Hmm.
in it. And then this Grinch showed up on me unexpectedly, and so I said, "I can't give it to her." So now I'm betwixt and between. I can't decide.
Yeah.
Um, I
You
can't
sure you just
decide.
don't want to keep it and you get a good reason? Oh, I can't give it to her because I like it. It's Grinch.
Well, I think I will. I mean, I may give it to her. It, I'm trying to build a small group of paintings that I can do a show with at some point. And I'm I'm thinking that if I do it in large pieces, like the 40 by 25.5 inch one, it'll take me 5 years to get 20 paintings, which
Right.
I'd need for a show. But on the other hand, I figure, well, okay, if I give everybody these this year, um, then I won't have small ones until next year available. But ultimately, and one's enough, right?
Right. Right. Right.
You can't give them more than one. So then they'll start to pile up, I think. And I can only work on the big one on weekends. So all right, well, let's carry on and because the dead talk back here, and I think we should
Let them talk.
yeah. Gotta get into the share mode here. All right, so here's where we are in the book, and we're um, at 109. So here the dead interrupted Philemon's speech with angry laughter and mocking shouts. And as they withdrew, their discord, mockery, and laughter faded into the distance. I turned to Philemon and said to him, "Oh, Philemon, I believe you are mistaken. It seems that you teach a raw superstition which the fathers had successfully and gloriously overcome, that polytheism, which a mind produces only when it can, or that polytheism, which a mind produces only when it cannot free its gaze from the force of compulsive desire, chained to sensory things." My son Philemon replied, "These dead have rejected the single and highest God. So how can I teach them about the one only and not multifarious God? They must, of course, believe me, but they have rejected their belief. So I teach them the God that I know, the multifarious and extended, who is both the thing and its appearance, and they also know him even if they are not conscious of him." Quote, "These dead have given names to all beings, the beings in the air, on the earth, and in the water. They have weighed and counted things. They have counted so and so many horses, cows, sheep, trees, segments of land, and springs. They said this is good for this purpose, and that is good for that one. What did they do with the admirable tree? What happened to the sacred frog? Did they see his golden eye? Where is the atonement for the 7,777 cattle whose blood they spilled, whose flesh they consumed? Did they do penance for the sacred ore that they dug up from the belly of the earth? No, they named, weighed, numbered, and apportioned all things. They did whatever pleased them. And what did they do? You saw the powerful, but this is precisely how they gave power to things unknowingly. Yet the time has come when things speak. The piece of flesh says, how many men? The piece of ore says, how many men? The ship says, how many men? The coal says, how many men? The house says, how many men? And things rise and number and weigh and apportion and devour millions of men. Your hand grasped the earth and tore off the halo and weighed and numbered the bones of things. Is not the one and only simple-minded God pulled down and thrown in onto a heap, the mass seeming to separate things dead and living. Yes, this God taught you to weigh and number bones, but the month of this God is drawing to a close. A new month stands at the door. Therefore, everything had to be as it is, and hence everything must become different. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and give Jordan a chance to comment on this.
Well, I think it's interesting. Everything must become different. And all the way through the first part, how many men? How many men? I mean, quantity is specific, quantity of specific, and then not so much male versus female, but it's just this repetitive droning metronome, except then the music enters right at the end. All must become different. So this,
Yeah.
the musical scales enter instead of the I guess instead of the earthly father kind of thing, you end up getting life rather than an abstract. You get living instead of just divinity. So it's less concept, but the concept magically comes alive.
Well, absolutely. And, there's an essence of Buddhism in here too, because,
Good point.
you know, the Buddha recognized in his moment of enlightenment under the Bodhi tree that the only thing that doesn't change is change itself, and everything is changeable and becomes something else. It doesn't. It doesn't disappear. So, for example, I was chopping up vegetables for my omelet this morning, and a piece of tomato went down the drain accidentally. And I said, because I've been practicing Buddhism here and there over the years, I said, on to the next life. So it was, it had become a tomato, a fully ripe tomato, but it had to become something else. Once it's fully ripe, it has to become something else. It can't just sit there and be a fully ripe tomato, because fully ripe tomatoes rot if you don't eat them. And so, uh, and so when you eat them, it becomes a human being. If it goes down the drain accidentally, it's still going to go on to its next life. It's not going to be lost in the universe, because everything becomes something else over time, no matter how long it takes. And, some things have millions of year half-lives, but nonetheless, they still are in the process. I mean, radiation is itself the very essence of becoming something else. That's what it is.
Oh, what's interesting too with radiation that you brought that up, we use lead blankets to shield parts of the body when getting X-rays, and it's my understanding that lead is radioactive material that's ancient and old and past the half-life. So it's no longer radioactive. And in that sense, it can block the radiation. It's like the opposite of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's maybe possibly why lead is toxic, because it has that lineage of previously being radioactive, and now it's pretty much poison. Malleable, but not
Right.
edible.
And of course, those of us who know that the center of,
Oh, your video froze.
I don't know what you can take from that except that,
Your,
in the context, go ahead.
your video froze right when you said those of us who know the center, boom, and it froze right there.
Okay, so those of us who know that the center of the earth is molten lead. Okay. There's no becoming anymore. Once it's lead, it's lead. I mean, it can be molten by being as hot as it is, which it is, um, but nonetheless, it's lead. And in the context of what Jung is saying, you see that okay, there's one status that on the earth that doesn't become something new except when the sun gobbles up the earth. Then when the sun becomes a red giant and the earth is gobbled up by the sun, then it'll become something new, something else, right? Um, so anyway,
So,
and
I don't know. You mentioned the core of the Earth is lead. My understanding was it was iron and nickel. But maybe. Hmm.
I
It's not really I mean, maybe not a talking point, but I
yeah,
just thought.
I mean it could be that you're right, but I think it's lead. I think that it
I
melts down to iron. Okay, it goes
I was going
toward
to say it
iron,
melts down to iron because I mean
but then
iron is ferrous and magnetic, and that would cause the orbital spinning and then the occasional stopping and then going the
right,
other way.
but then at the very center is lead, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and and so anyway, let's go on with this reading.
Yep.
This is no polytheism that I have made up, but many gods who powerfully raise their voices and tear humanity to bloody pieces. So and so many men, weighed, numbered, apportioned, hacked, and devoured. Therefore I speak of many gods as I speak of many things, since I know them. Why do I call them gods? For the sake of their superiority. Do you know about this superior strength? Now is the time when you can learn. These dead laugh at my foolishness, but would they have raised a murderous hand against their brothers if they had atoned for the ox with the velvet eyes? If they had done penance for the shiny ore? If they had worshipped the holy trees? If they had made peace with the soul of the golden-eyed frog? What say things dead and living? Who is greater, man or the gods? Truly, this sun has become a moon, and no new sun has risen from the contractions of the last hour of the night. And when he had finished these words, Philemon bent down to the earth and kissed it, and said, Mother, may your son be strong. Then he stood, looked up at the heavens, and said, How dark is your place of the new light? Then he disappeared. Okay, so that's the fourth sermon to the dead.
I really think how apropos for, I mean, today being the new moon in Pisces, the sun has become a moon, and no new sun has arisen from the contractions of the last hour of the night. I mean, like we were saying before we went live, I mean, the new moon to me is the honest moon. It doesn't have its own light, so we can't see it. There's nothing reflected. And it's in the shadow of the earth, as
Mhm.
it would be, shielded from the sun. So it doesn't reflect. It is a complete inner natural, I call it midnight ocean. So, I mean, it's said to be a great time for manifestation. And what's interesting, how dark is your place of the new light? The new light will come from this, how dark New Moon place.
Right. Now, keeping in mind that these 7 sermons came in 7 consecutive nights, and just think of the complexity and the differences of subject matter that were coming out of Jung onto his clinical notes. Okay, there's a question from the Invisible Man. Can you do readings from the Black Book at some point in the future? Make a series of the Black Book. And Invisible Man, we are trying to do this in conjunction with the Red Book in our advanced reading group on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And I don't publish those recordings on YouTube yet. I may do in the future, but we will consider it, is what I would say. I mean, the truth about the Black Books is that they are really essentially the same as the Red Book, but Sonu Shamdasani, who both translated major parts of the Red Book and the Black Books, and who was the editor of the Red Book, made certain decisions about what to include and what not to include. And so, and I have read the Black Books cover to cover. I'm probably one of the few that's read it cover to cover, every word of it, of the 7 volumes of the Black Books. It took me a year to do that. But what I found is that there are significant changes, significant differences between the Red Book and the Black Book. So it's for that reason that I will consider doing that in the future if Jordan is game for that. But we have so much material to work with in Jung's oeuvre that we'll just have to decide when we get to the end of the Red Book what we do next.
I'd be prone to say no to the Black Books from the no one cares about the blood, sweat, and tears of the poet. They just want the poem. It seems the Red Book is the product and the Black Books are the process. I think it's a wonderful personal exercise, but honestly, how many years would we be through 7? I mean, all the Black Books, and
well, it would take 2 or 3 years to get through it all.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'd like to look at the geodes and the jewels and the products. Not, I feel like the Black Books are the magma inside Jung's volcano, but it has not emerged. It's formless in a way, and without reason, it's a textual doodle of sorts. But I think his works seem to be then discussable. But I feel like I could have plenty of opinions in the Black Books, but I'd be conversing with Jung and it'd be opinion. Whereas here we're looking at, oh, what's he saying clearly? So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I also too, I think the Black Books is would be such a long series. Our time might be more
better
valuable to the public to discuss the published works rather than the kabuki theater, so to speak, of what's behind them.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a point well taken. I mean it's sort of an acquired taste to have gone through these books with such care as I have. I mean, this particular time is the 3rd time that I've read the Red Book online. Okay. And so it's useful for everybody to read the Black Books on your own and reflect on it. And why did Shamdasani pick certain things and leave certain things out? Most of what's in the Black Book is also Black Books is also in the Red Book. I will say that. Okay, but there are some critical changes that are really important, and I've talked about those multiple times on other sessions, and in the advanced class. So if you want to join the advanced class, uh, you can probably get access to the recordings. I haven't uploaded everything, to be honest with you. I have them on my computer, but not everything uploaded onto the Dropbox. But I may do at some point in the future, I may upload them to YouTube, but we have permission to do that now. So, okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to need a bio break shortly. So what I'm going to do is read some of the fifth sermon, which is coming up next, and then ask you to comment on it when I stop. Is that okay for you, Jordan?
Yeah, that's certainly.
Okay. All right. So when the following night came, the dead approached noisily, pushing and shoving. They were scoffing and explained, "Teach us, fool, about the church and Holy Communion." But Philemon stepped before them and began to speak. And this is the fifth sermon to the dead. The world of the gods is made manifest in spirituality and in sexuality. The celestial ones appear in spirituality, the earthly in sexuality. Spirituality conceives and embraces. It is womanlike, and therefore we call it mater celestis, which I guess is divine matter, the celestial mother, or mater celestis, the celestial mother. Sexuality engenders and creates. It is mankind, and therefore we call it Phalos, the earthly father. The sexuality of man is more earthly than the woman is more spirit. That of woman is more spiritual. The spirituality of man is more heavenly. It moves toward the greater. The spirituality of woman is more earthly. It moves toward the smaller. Mendacious and devilish is the spirituality of man, and it moves toward the smaller. Mendacious and devilish is the spirituality of woman, and it moves toward the greater. Each shall go to its own place. Man and woman become devils to each other if they do not separate their spiritual ways, for the essence of creation is differentiation. The sexuality of man goes toward the earthly. The sexuality of woman goes toward the spiritual. Man and woman become devils to each other if they do not distinguish their sexuality. Man shall know the smaller, woman the greater. Man shall differentiate himself from both spirituality and sexuality. He shall call spirituality mother and set her between heaven and earth. He shall call sexuality Phalos and set him between himself and earth. For the mother, the Phalos are superhuman demons that reveal the world of the gods. They affect us more than the gods, since they are closely akin to our essence. If you do not differentiate yourself from sexuality and from spirituality, and do not regard them as an essence both above and beyond you, you are delivered over to them as qualities of the pleroma. Spirituality and sexuality are not your qualities, not things you possess and encompass. Rather, they possess and encompass you. since they are powerful demons, manifestations of the gods, and hence reach beyond you, existing in themselves. No man has a spirituality unto himself and of sexuality. Therefore, no one escapes these demons. You shall look upon them as demons and as a common task and danger, a common burden that life has laid upon you. Thus, life too is for you a common task and danger, as are the gods, and first and foremost, terrible Abraxas. Okay, I'll stop there. I'm going to encompass a little more of it so you can see more. I'll be right back, Jordan.
That sounds good. I think my big point here is how much he's inducing the trickster with the mendacious quality and devilish quality of both male and female. And mendacious means lying, or in this case, it's not an impish, malicious lie. It's simply an irony of one thing meaning quite another. And what's interesting, though, is the word mendicant at the base means prone to begging. And so there's a juvenile quality to the spirituality, and a juvenile quality to the spirituality as it's in place. But then as it grows, there's realize that the man's sexuality is more earthly, the woman more spiritual. Well, so that's then, living in reality and living in ecstasy, or celestial mother, as it were. And the spirituality of man more heavenly, it moves towards the greater. And what's interesting, spirituality, the woman is more earthly, moves towards the smaller. So we have the dance here of earth and cosmos all at one time, which in a sense to me, almost it reminds me of Artemis, the hunter, kind of a sniper eye, and Diana, the huntress, very much a sniper eye, very much focused, very much goes after what she or he wants and gets it. And then there's the cosmic piece, which is more Juno. He says, mother, celestial mother. Well, Juno is the mother of heaven mythologically. So I think back and forth here between sexuality and spirituality, he's playing the spectrum of both and in one sense, mendacious and devilish is the spirituality of both man and woman. He's alluding to persona. So in that sense, if the surface, your surface, is generated by your substance, to me, it's just an echo. It is not necessarily a persona that's going to get in your way. But a lot of people believe the superficiality of how they come across, and it becomes a concrete thing they try to fit. So skips back. I think my primary point is that mendacious is quite the heart here. Mendacious means lying. And so in this sense, it's not a malicious lie. It's the irony lie of the devilish quality, spirituality of man. Sexuality moves towards the larger, the spirituality to the smaller. And then factor the mendacious to mendicant at its base. It's prone to begging, and that's juvenile. It's not confident. It's not sovereign. And what happens, I think here, the persona comes to mind as a trickster of the mendacious, the lie, the surface that's not generated by the substance. And as Jung says, strange that some people do actually believe how they come across that way. And it gets concretized, and they start to try to fit their persona instead of it's a constantly generated fish scale or snake skin that's being shedded. So I think here the mendacious and devilish of both spirituality and sexuality is, be mindful of your expectations. There's some serious blind spots, and sometimes if one thing appears, it's actually the other. So there's a Loki, coyote, trickster quality going back and forth with the both and.
Right. So I want to address this a little bit in the context of basketball, okay? And just to say that we will be finishing right on the hour this week because the Big Ten championship basketball game in women's basketball is occurring at noon Eastern time today. And if you have not watched the Iowa team play basketball, the Iowa women's team play basketball in your lifetime, it's time that everybody do that because there is an amazing thing going on in the Iowa basketball team, the Iowa women's team, where Caitlin Clark, probably a very distant cousin of mine because my grandmother was a Clark, but in any case, we're all distant cousins in the end, so I guess it doesn't matter at all. But Caitlin Clark has broken the record for scoring in a career in college basketball. Okay. Apparently there's another player who's now beating her freshman record. So that's going to be interesting to watch too. But Caitlin has beaten the college basketball scoring record for both men and women.
I was going to say, yeah, both.
Right. And yesterday, Iowa had more assists than had 30 assists in one championship game, which beats a record. And 15 of those assists were Caitlin Clark's assists. So not only did she score like 50 points yesterday, but she also assisted her teammates in the other half of the scoring, so that there were at least, I think there were at least 4 players that scored over 10 points in the game. There might have been 5, in fact, but I just didn't get the last number. And Caitlin,
well, it's interesting. She's not a limelight hog. She's a team player, except she's not a team player to dilute the team. She's like raising everyone else up to keep the bar up. It's like, no, I'm not going to average myself out. Let's all move up together.
yeah.
So I think that's what, to me, is so impressive about her is that sometimes when the other people score, it's like it's kind of a gimme. But
yeah, and
her,
if you want to see
team.
If you want to see divinity in action, I mean, she's an entirely different kettle of fish from all other women basketball players. Okay, she's just completely different, and definitely sort of a level above where most other women basketball players are. I mean, the whole Iowa team is pretty exceptional, but Caitlin is, she moves through the game as if she's a goddess, and she has more 3-point shots than almost anybody. So she'll shoot from midcourt, and you think to yourself, "Oh, that'll never go in." And the woman goes, it goes in, and so anyway, I can't describe it. I mean, I'm not a big sports fan per se. I don't watch a lot of sporting events except the Army-Navy football game. But watching Caitlin and her teammates play is like watching a ballet. It's incredible. It's just and yesterday I saw them do this do-si-do where they did about 7 passes in front of the basket, and then finally somebody put the ball in the basket, and by the time they got to that point, the other team was just clueless. I mean, they were going, what can we do?
Yeah, they don't even know where to go because it's like, wow, when's it? Oh, oops, too late.
Yeah, and I don't mean passes out behind the 3-point line. I mean literally
No, no,
in
no,
the
up in there like
in,
gymnastics under the net.
yeah, in the paint. I don't know who scored the score that time. I doubt if it was Caitlin. She had been involved in the play at the beginning, but these women right under the basket passed the ball back and forth among themselves so much that the other team, the Michigan team, had no hope. They just it was like a shell game where they had no hope of knowing where the attempt to score was going to come from.
Well,
So
they remind me in that sense with that particular play. They remind me of Sun Tzu and Art of War in action, where toy and taunt your opponent's hubris until you get them to move. Watch how they move, then go ahead and But they're playing right under their noses,
yeah,
and honestly, they're getting them not only to react, but to tire and get hypnotized and confused. And
absolutely.
there's this whole what this is not the way to play basketball, and so it the thing is though it sure is the way to play because they're doing it so their way.
Yep. So in any case, we're talking about gods and goddesses here, and it's rare that you can point to one event where you can say that you have seen kind of divinity, human divinity in action. But yesterday's game was definitely that, and I expect today's game to be also very challenging because apparently Nebraska's team is also very good, although I haven't seen it. And so it's we all owe it to ourselves to go watch this. It's on Big Ten, the Big Ten channel, I guess, because this is the Big Ten championship for women's basketball. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But what I was watching yesterday was just so beautiful in the way, in the performance art of the game that it really struck me. And there, I've been to a few games like that. I saw Roger Staubach play for Navy twice live. And they won both games, of course. And the first of the two games had Joe Bellino on the Navy team, who also won a Heisman Trophy. So Staubach and Bellino, I think they won by 43-12 or something that year. I think it was 1959 is when the game I'm talking about was played, the Army Navy game. But it was just a symphony in action. And this is what I saw yesterday. So if you have a chance to take some time at noon Eastern time today, I really recommend it. It's worth your time. Okay, so I'm going to finish sermon 5, and you'll see why I stepped off on that, because uh, where I left off is man is weak, and community is therefore indispensable. If your community is not under the sign of the mother, it is under the sign of the phallus. Absence of community is suffering and sickness. Community is everything. Community in everything is dismemberment and dissolution. Differentiation leads to singleness. Singleness is opposed to community. But because of man's weakness with regard to the gods and the demons and their invincible law, community is necessary, not for man's sake, but because of the gods. The gods drive you to community. insofar as the gods impose community upon you, it is necessary. More is bad. In the community, every man shall submit to others so that the community be maintained, for you need it. In singleness, every man shall place himself above the other, so that every man may come to himself and avoid slavery. Abstention shall hold good in community, extravagance in singleness. Community is depth, singleness is height. Right measure is community in community, purifies and preserves. Right measure in singleness purifies and increases. Community gives us warmth, singleness gives us light. Okay, so go ahead, Jordan.
Oh yeah, community gives us warmth. Singleness gives us light. What's interesting is the singleness gives us light. Well, that ember, it lights the fire to the community, which reminds me of, the child that does not receive the community's love will come back later to burn it to the ground. So there's a different kind of the light there. But community gives us warmth. So there's connection. And what happens is, lighting someone else's candle with your candle does not diminish your fire.
Yeah. And, this is one of the reasons why I was emphasizing this basketball game that's about to take place, because Caitlin Clark is indeed light, as any sports hero is. I mean, they become a god for us in whatever sport they are. And she is that. But this coach, Coach Bluter, I believe is her name, has put together a community of players that is such that they're just hard to beat. I mean, they're just amazing young women, and they're not glory hogs, really. I mean, yes, Caitlin Clark will interview with the newscasters both before and after the game and that sort of thing, but I'm sure that none of the other players begrudge her that time, because she's simply the representative of all of them,
Right.
and the natural representative of all of them. And they just had so many 3-point shots from everyone yesterday. I mean, right at the end of the game, there's one smaller young woman who was out there playing, and she hadn't scored a 3-point shot, and I think she might have been the last first stringer not to have scored one. So the team just gave her the ball, and she did this incredible shot from mid-court, and whoop, it goes in.
Right.
And she turns around to the camera and just says, "So there."
Right. We're all done.
And the day before yesterday, Michigan had beaten Indiana by a large score, but yesterday, Michigan itself was beaten by like 25 points, and at one point they were behind 33 points. And you go, oh, it's just a different thing going on in this game, and with these people. And so I think I'm going to call it quits at this point.
Yeah,
Because
I think if we start into more, we're gonna stop in the middle, and then I guess your game won't be as much fun, because I think nice pause here and prep for that. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth everybody's taking a look at it. And, you know, if you don't, fine, whatever floats your boat. Um, but I can't say enough of how unique watching this team play is compared to any other team that you've ever seen. And yesterday I happened to be in the barber shop where they were playing a men's final. And, it looked like it compared to what the women were doing, it was just like Neanderthals. And these guys were missing all these corner shots and 3-point shots. So
Well,
it's
I'm glad you said that because I don't follow basketball much, but there's a whole look how magical her movement is. And that doesn't just happen.
yeah,
There's natural talent that's required, but there's also the ability that's developed. And I guess it reminds me of Bruce Lee. I'm not afraid of a person who knows 10,000 kicks. I'm afraid of the person who's done one kick 10,000 times. I mean, so there's just a natural living motion, very
yeah,
animal, refined to just how she lives out the plays, where it's mesmerizing just to watch. So I think not only is she so good, she's the professor kind of thing. Um, I don't think she's even trying to fake anyone out anymore. She just moves, and they just aren't as natural as her,
yeah.
and
And
it's so beautiful to watch.
right. And one of one of the reasons I'm going into this in such length is because of what Jordan just said, which is this is the point of Jungian psychology,
Mm.
is to live into your being, to find the thing that is going to make your life flow. Um, and, nobody can specify what that should be, but you probably should somehow get in contact with your unconscious. That's that's sort of a essential bottom line, I would say. I mean, this is the point that Jung was making. This is what the Red Book is. It's him in touch with his unconscious, coming out with these incredible sermons just straight off and, just handwritten out into the black books. Um, and, one after another, like this, all 7 sermons came in like a week. And you
Mm.
go, whoa. I mean, and so it's kind of Jung at his game. Um, and so, you know, I don't know how you go about communicating with your unconscious. I've found, and the reason that I've shared my painting process is because suddenly I've got a clear path. I don't want anything else in my lifetime. Okay. For me, doing these paintings, I don't care if I ever sell one, not at all. Um, but I have people keep looking at them and saying, wow, that's amazing, or those colors are amazing, and so on. And, I'm not, that's not such a big thing for me. What is the big thing is actually doing it. And,
Mhm.
and when I sit down to work on it, my unconscious drives the sorry with the fringe on top, I'll tell you.
Well, yeah, and I think just the living it piece. No longer, it's like I suggest to people, don't explain your philosophy or your psychology. Embody it and live it into being. And to me now, I used to always say, I dive deep and I go over the liminal horizon and I swim the unconscious and I don't need scuba tanks, all this stuff. Like I can deal with a dark.
Right.
But now I'm like, no, 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 I'm going to stay in the boat. And, I can feed the monsters in the deep, put the stuff over the plank and, feed those sharks. But I don't need to go there. I'm going to live here. And it's like this perpetual gas station
Yeah, it
where,
really is. I mean, and I'm just finding that it just it just informs my day, and so I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, and I'm teaching in this very, very tough school where kids are in fights like every transition between every class. There's a fight going on in the passageway, and um, and that it's an exhausting task to be one of the staff members there because you always have to be on guard. I walked past the assistant principal and my department chair in special education the other day, and they assistant principal said to me, "Are you all right, Mr. Conover?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, it looks like you have blood on your trousers." And I said, "Oh, well, that's watercolor."
oh, funny. Nice. You're going, yeah, you're, you're going in with war paint, except literally it's paint. And so
Right,
it's like,
right, because we have what they call project-based learning every day, second period, and I lead the group that is doing school murals. And so we're painting a mural this quarter about hidden figures, which is going to be awesome when it's
nice.
done. It's really amazing. And and the one we did last quarter for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea turned out to be pretty
Pretty
awesome
amazing.
also. And 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 so, I'm getting watercolor on my clothes very frequently, but the assistant principal is really aware of that. And so I go by him and he thinks I'm bleeding, and it doesn't seem odd
Yeah, right.
that it might be true. So anyway, because I am in that environment, I'm finding that this doodling or um, painting that I'm doing, it actually involves a combination of doodling, painting, and Rocky, which are all Colleen Kuber's teachings, um, prepares me for the day. It just lets me um, process what's happening in the school. And, several times in the last couple of weeks, I've come home from school and the first thing I have to do is take a shower. That's de rigueur because uh, my wife and I live with her mother, who is quite fragile. But um, but then I want to sit down and paint because I want to process what's been going on during the day. And it really helps me so much. I can't even begin to tell you.
Well,
And
and I think
sure,
what's interesting about that to me, I mean, when I said, the unconscious as the perpetual gas station, I mean, I'm not implying any kind of metaphor. I
mhm,
mean, literally. So you're taking that as the de rigueur after the shower to connect and refuel. And literally, like gas in my car, I, I go fill it up.
mhm,
I don't think about it when I'm not filling the tank. And gasoline's toxic, it's potent,
yeah,
except not when I know to put it in the tank. And so what happens is the unconscious, I think, is a similar kind of potency where fuel with it, but don't go dive into it. And so I find that the more and more I just allow it to fuel me, it's like the black books. I don't need to talk about the process,
yeah,
less metaphor, less analogy. And I'm starting to notice a different kind of occasional clarity. And And I think possibly too, I'm focused more on my verbs, and the nouns
Mhm.
aren't changing. That, my interests are my interests, but the
Sure.
way I'm approaching things now, even from the unconscious, is more matter of fact.
Right.
And, you know,
And I have long felt that what we're doing here in this session is the same thing. Okay,
yeah.
I've long known um, since I began to do these sessions in 2016 with my local group um, that I never remember what went on during the class. I
Mhm.
have no idea what I've said in the 2 hours. I used to walk out of the pizza restaurant where we used to do this, and I would have no idea what had happened, but somebody would say, "Oh, that was an amazing session, Skip." And so the
I
truth
feel the
is,
same.
pardon?
I feel the same at my table. I mean, I'm
Right.
just there. It's like a Zen sit. And I realized the other day, oh, I haven't been sketching much because I've been at my table. That's my
Mhm.
doodle. And the thing
Yeah,
is,
sure.
it's the people that sit down where we paint. And, it's not just me as a talking head. But so you saying that really reminds me of, oh, don't imitate. What's your method? How
Yeah,
do you
sure.
live something into being? So there, I mean,
Right. And so, we've never made any income from what we're doing here. Um, I don't, if you don't know about YouTube, um, if you get 100,000 views and and you do that and you have 30,000 followers, you know, YouTube might pay you $250 a month or something like that. And I have nothing like that. So typically, YouTube does give me a small income cash flow, but the outgo is far more. But uh, it takes about 2 months to build up $100, and that's with 20,000 followers of this channel.
mhm.
And so the point is, we're not doing this for the money. We're doing this for something else. And it is a way for me to experience things from my unconscious and learn things myself. And I just point to Hemingway, who was asked once about his writing. How does he go about writing? Why does his writing why is it so special, right? And he says, well, I just sit down at the table, open a vein and bleed. Okay. And
Mhm.
that was his metaphorical way of referring to the same phenomenon, which
Mhm.
is he was connected to his unconscious and he just bled it out when he was writing.
Mhm.
And, the same with Jackson Pollock, for example, would be an obvious one where his his drip paintings, I mean, I think like most of us, I think I've seen small pictures of Jackson Pollock's work, and you say, oh, what's special about that? Um, a kindergartner could do it. Well, no, they can't. No, they couldn't. Uh, and and so
Or better, actually, a kindergartner could, but then most people from age 6 to his age couldn't because they're then disconnected. I mean,
right,
he's reconnected.
yeah, and so Kathy kindly asked how she could donate, and so this is not a solicitation for a donation, but there is a little box with a dollar sign down in the chat where you would put a chat, to the right, there's an emoticon, and then there's a dollar sign, and there's a plus sign where you can add things to the chat. And so if you hit the dollar sign, I guess you get you can make a small donation in a super chat, but this is not a solicitation for a donation. If you feel so moved, people do occasionally make donations, but um,
Well, you mentioned it earlier, we don't do this for the money.
right.
And what I've started to realize is why do I do what I do? It's because of not the success of my career. That stopped at age 42. It's what am I in service to? And at that point, it became a currency of value, not of money. And, a roof over my head is wise. I want to prosper. I want to have abundance and make money, but doing it with a currency of value. So
Yeah.
I don't get home and go, oh my, happy Monday. Oh, welcome. I'm like, oh, Monday's just another day that ends in a letter Y, and it's like they all do. Holiday, birthday, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday. So, I mean, I think that a lot of people get wrapped up in a rat race or other, where, oh no, Monday through Friday, if they're incarcerated, well, then all they do is decompress or go too far on the weekend. It's a pendulum. So you're
Yeah.
always exhausted. But I think if you can kind of relegate the I'm supposed to not to dutiful, but just discipline and do what you're doing, and then, get back on with your life. Well, even while you're doing what you're doing, that should be part of your life. So
Yeah.
I think the currency of value to me is how I approach these sessions. Um, I don't even
What?
I don't even approach it as volunteerism or pro bono even anymore. There's a I don't I used to give 10% of my annual time to volunteer, community, this and that.
Mhm.
And then I realized when I stopped, it wasn't because I wasn't doing that anymore. I'm going to find ways to contribute value that don't invoice. And I find people work differently when there's no money involved.
Yeah.
And so having both, I think, is important. Because actually, the money I make allows me to sit here every Sunday and not have to be somewhere else.
Yeah. Um, well, now I'm thinking of my painting as what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
my going to school is, I don't know, in some perverse way, it's kind of fun for me. I don't know why, but sometimes I hear the darndest things. Like I have, I have one student who's a very difficult student who hasn't passed a core course since the fifth grade. And there's reason in the family for that. I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but this person is pugnacious, to say the least. And on Friday, uh, I was told by this person that they didn't like me because my forehead was too big and it was shiny. And I just cracked up.
Nice.
And then the response was, and I don't like your laugh either.
Well, and that kind of engagement, actually, that's a compliment. The
Yeah, I
fact that
mean,
they're paying attention, that's actually love in an offhand way. And I there's wow, there's a plus minus schizophrenic homeless person locally here, and she's taken care of. But she shows up, and some days someone talks to her, and she's yelling all day long. Well, she's talking with multiple people, and last year at one point I walked up and I said, I won't use her name, but I said, I don't mean to interrupt all of you guys, to honor the fact that she's having multiple personality conversation. I said, but when you get a chance, I have a question. And she looked at me kind of confused, and usually I know better than to talk to her because that opens it up. I mean, that's disrespectful because then
right.
she'll have a bad day. Well, she comes over later and said, what? And one, I'm honored that she's actually responding to the question. And I said, I just wanted to know if you want a bottle of water or a cup of coffee. And I won't use the exact expletives, but I hate coffee. And she stormed off. But the thing is, that was interaction. It wasn't grating and poisonous and aggressive. The fact that she cussed and yelled, that how much, I mean, there's a lot of energy in hate. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the fact that she actually shared that much about coffee with some choice expletives, I just started smiling. So when
Uh-huh.
he says your forehead's too big and it's shiny and I don't like your I mean, he's basically saying, "Hi, sir. I love you. Thank you."
Right. And so I have to tell you one more and then we have to wrap up. But
Yeah.
um, one of the things that we're doing in project-based learning is that we're painting quotes on the walls of the portable where my classroom is,
Mm.
or one of my classrooms. I'm actually the itinerant teacher because I teach in 5 different classrooms during the day. And let's see, two of them are in our portables, so-called. These are temporary buildings because they didn't have enough room in the brick and mortar building. And so in that portable, they painted the walls this dark blue. And so you go in there and it's dark in that passageway. And so I decided that I was going to have my students, and mind you, I only have had 5, although several of them have disappeared. So now I think I only have 2 that are still with me after at the end of the quarter. But anyway, one of them is this very tough boy, and he's very often fights. Um, he calls himself an influencer and so on. But I got him to write a quote on the wall, which was one he selected, and he wrote it on the wall. He did a beautiful job. He did a very artistic job on this. And so I'm seeing that he has a right brain interest, right, in in the arts. And so I wanted to have another quote put on the wall, and he said he would do it. And this is the quote that he put on the wall. He outlined it. I'm having to fill it in. He's not filling in the letters for me. I have to do it myself, but he outlined it for me. And he put the whole thing in. So here's the quote. Um, First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win. M.K. Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
And he put in one
Mm-hmm.
30-minute period, he got that whole quote on the wall, and he never resisted what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, okay, I have gotten through to this young man, in some
Well, and
way.
that's appropriate too to the scholarship of where he's living, and I mean his
Yeah,
whole placement, and it feels like he probably has a different bent right now than Gandhi implied. But so what? Because it's his bent, and that's important because you take things not as you're supposed to, you take them as you do.
yeah. And the other day, also on Friday, um, I was in the midst of breaking up a fight in another class in the passageway in the 8th grade hallway. This kid is a 7th grader, I think, but um, I was in the process of breaking up a fight, and uh, he's and mind you, for those of you that don't know, I am permanently disabled. I have 3 joint replacements, and I carry a cane to walk. And so I'm in the midst of breaking up this fight, and he comes over and he says, "Don't worry, Mr. Conover, I got you." And he then went and broke up the fight, and it was a very interesting moment. So,
That's actually, to me, that right there is some serious progress because he's not changing who he is, but he's taking responsibility. And what's interesting to me, there's self-love going on there. When someone has their own back, then
mhm,
they can get your back. If
yep,
someone's overgiving, they get your back, it's kind of dangerous because then you're going to end up having to step in. Then it's messier. There are more
yeah,
variables. But it
right,
sounds like he's got his own back, so he can have yours too.
yeah. It's interesting. Uh, so I'll be interested to see how he develops through the school year because the first time I saw him was in a classroom where I was trying to teach, and he was just cutting up in the classroom and making it
Mhm.
impossible. I had to call for behavior support, and I don't know if you remember in our school systems where there was a panic button that you could push if things really got panicky in your classroom, and nobody ever did it. Nobody ever pushed the buttons. Well, we pushed the button. Among other things, we have to call for a bathroom escort if because we don't allow the children to use the bathrooms willy-nilly. And so they can only go one at a time, and they can only go during the middle of classes, not in the transitions. Um, and they can only go more than 10 minutes into the class or more than 10 minutes before the end of class. So in the middle of your class, if a kid raises their hand and say they need a bathroom break, they probably do, but you have to push the button to call for a bathroom escort so that
Yeah,
we
think
have
our
adults that do it.
I think our panic button was the teacher got a lot louder, and then everyone shut the heck up.
Right. Well,
So I mean, there
doesn't
was a
work that way in my school.
yeah. I think our panic button was you will be threatened in a way that's more strong than your actions are currently.
Yeah. But in our case, it's fairly common to call for behavior support, and then adults can't come running. And
Well, and I get it too, because I mean, honestly, that's an insurance thing for liability. I mean,
yeah,
to make sure that you don't get a bunch of teachers sued because of a tantrum of some child.
yeah. So,
You got a game to get to 6 minutes
yep.
from now. So
And Cherie has made a book suggestion, Mission to Moscow by Joseph Davies. This was in my papa's library, a record of the State Department to the Soviet Union from 1936 to 38, ambassador to the Soviet Union. Um, and it's published by Simon and Schuster, copyright 1941. I'm sorry I haven't followed the YouTube chat as much today. I have been monitoring it, but I haven't taken the time to read everything. So peace. We'll see you next week. See you Wednesday. I hope to take care now.
actually, yeah,
Bye.
read book twice a week is I think too much. So
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. That's